November 18, 1993. Sony Music Studios in New York City. MTV is about to record one of the most iconic live performances in rock history. But there's a problem. Kurt Cobain refuses to play Smells Like Teen Spirit. He refuses to play Come As You Are. He refuses to play any of the hits that made Nirvana the biggest band in the world. The MTV producers are panicking. They've built an entire show around Nirvana's greatest hits. Kurt doesn't care. Instead, he hands them a setlist filled with obscure covers that most people have never heard. Songs by forgotten punk bands. A song by David Bowie that nobody knows. And a haunting folk song from 1944 by a blues singer who died in prison. The producers think he's sabotaging the show. But when Kurt performs that final song, Where Did You Sleep Last Night?, his voice cracks with such raw emotion that even he can't continue. Subscribe now, because what happened during those 90 minutes changed live music forever. I'm Alex Coletti, producer for MTV Unplugged. It's early November 1993, and I'm trying to convince Nirvana to appear on our show. MTV Unplugged is one of the biggest music shows on television. We've had Eric Clapton, Paul McCartney, Rod Stewart, legendary artists performing stripped-down, acoustic versions of their hits. The format is simple. Take away the electric guitars and loud drums, and let the songs speak for themselves. It's intimate. It's raw. It's beautiful. Nirvana seems like a perfect fit. They're the biggest rock band in the world right now. Nevermind sold 30 million copies. In Utero just debuted at number 1. Their appearance would be massive for the show. But there's a problem. Kurt Cobain doesn't want to do it. He thinks Unplugged is boring. He thinks acoustic performances are predictable. He's seen other episodes, and he's not impressed. I don't want to sit on a stool and play our hits, he tells his manager. But his bandmates, Chris Novoselic and Dave Grohl, convince him to at least consider it. MTV is offering good money. And maybe, just maybe, Kurt can use the platform to do something different. Kurt agrees to one meeting with me. We sit down in October, about a month before the planned taping. I'm excited. I'm thinking about how incredible Smells Like Teen Spirit will sound in an acoustic arrangement. How powerful Come As You Are will be when stripped down to its essence. Kurt has other ideas. I don't want to play our hits, he says immediately. I pause. What do you mean? Everyone knows those songs. I want to play something different. Something unexpected. I try to convince him that audiences want to hear the hits. That's the whole point of Unplugged, taking familiar songs and reimagining them acoustically. Kurt doesn't care. He wants to play covers. Obscure covers that nobody knows. What if we played songs by the Vaselines, he suggests. Or Meat Puppets. Or David Bowie. But not Changes or anything famous. Something from his weird period. I'm starting to panic. MTV is expecting Nirvana's greatest hits. Kurt is talking about playing songs that nobody has ever heard of. But there's something else Kurt wants to discuss, the set design. Most Unplugged episodes are shot with warm lighting, comfortable furniture, maybe some plants or candles. It's supposed to feel cozy and intimate. Kurt has a different vision. I want it to look like a funeral, he says. I think he's joking. He's not. I want stargazer lilies everywhere. Black candles. A crystal chandelier. Dark lighting. I want it to feel like we're performing at a wake. This is getting stranger by the minute. A funeral? For a live music show? But Kurt is adamant. If he's going to do Unplugged, it has to be on his terms. Dark. Unconventional. Uncomfortable. I talked to my team at MTV. They're skeptical. They want a normal Unplugged episode with Nirvana's hits and standard lighting. But I convinced them to let Kurt have creative control. If we push him too hard, he'll walk away. And we need this performance. We agree to Kurt's demands. Funeral aesthetics. Obscure covers. No hits. MTV executives are nervous. They think Kurt is sabotaging the show before it even starts. What none of us realize is that Kurt's instincts are about to create the greatest Unplugged performance in the show's history. And it will become Nirvana's final legacy. November 17, 1993. One day before the taping, Nirvana arrives at Sony Music Studios for rehearsals. I'm Alex Coletti, and I'm immediately concerned. Kurt looks exhausted. He's wearing a green fuzzy cardigan that looks like it came from a thrift store. His hair is unwashed. He moves slowly, like every step takes effort. But when he picks up his guitar, a 1959 Martin D-18E acoustic, something changes. He focuses. He becomes present. We start running through the set list, and I'm shocked by what I'm hearing. The first song is About a Girl. Okay, that's from their first album, Bleach. Not a hit, but at least it's a Nirvana song. Then comes Come As You Are, finally, a song people know. But then the set list gets weird. Jesus Doesn't Want Me for a Sunbeam, by the Vaselines, a Scottish indie pop band that almost nobody in America has heard of. The Man Who Sold the World, by David Bowie, but not one of Bowie's famous songs. This is a deep cut from 1970 that even Bowie fans barely remember. Then Kurt drops the real bombshell. He wants to bring guests on stage. Kurt Kirkwood and Chris Kirkwood from the Meat Puppets, a cult alternative band from Arizona, are going to join them for 3 songs. I'm starting to understand Kurt's vision. He's not trying to give MTV what they want. He's trying to use this platform to expose people to the underground music that influenced him. He's turning MTV Unplugged into a punk rock history lesson. During rehearsals, something becomes clear. Kurt's voice is struggling. He's been sick. His throat is raw. He's having trouble hitting the high notes. Dave Grohl is worried. Maybe we should postpone, he suggests. Kurt refuses. We're doing this tomorrow. The set design team has been working all day on Kurt's funeral vision. When I walk into Studio 3 to see the final setup, I'm stunned. The stage is filled with massive stargazer lilies, white and pink flowers with a heavy, almost overwhelming fragrance. Black candles are everywhere, casting flickering shadows. A crystal chandelier hangs from the ceiling, giving the whole space an eerie, gothic elegance. It looks like a Victorian funeral parlor. Kurt walks in and smiles for the first time all week. Perfect, he says. That night, the band stays late to rehearse the final song, Where Did You Sleep Last Night, by Lead Belly, a haunting folk blues song from 1944. This song has a dark history. Lead Belly, real name Huddai Ledbetter, was a blues singer who spent time in prison. He recorded this song about infidelity, murder, and sleeping alone in the cold pine trees. It's not a typical unplugged closer. Most artists end with their biggest hit, something uplifting that sends the audience home happy. Kurt wants to end with a song about death and loneliness. During the rehearsal, something extraordinary happens. Kurt sings the final verse, Shiver the Whole Night Through, and his voice cracks with such raw emotion that everyone in the studio stops. The room is silent. Dave Grohl has tears in his eyes. Chris Novoselic looks shaken. Even Kurt seems surprised by the intensity of what just came out of him. That's the one, he says quietly. That's how we end the show. I realize that this isn't going to be a normal unplugged performance. This is going to be something else entirely. Something darker. Something more honest. Something that reveals more about Kurt Cobain than any interview or hit song ever could. Tomorrow, we're going to capture lightning in a bottle. Or we're going to witness a complete disaster. November 18th, 1993. 7 p.m. The audience starts filing into Sony Music Studios. I'm Alex Coletti, and I'm watching Kurt Cobain pace nervously backstage. He's smoking cigarette after cigarette. His hands are shaking slightly. Pat Smear, the guitarist who's been touring with Nirvana, tries to lighten the mood with jokes. Dave Grohl is doing warm-up exercises on his drums. Chris Novoselic is tuning his acoustic bass. The audience is small, only about 220 people. MTV Unplugged is always intimate, but this feels especially claustrophobic. I can see audience members looking around at the funeral setup, confused. Where's the cozy unplugged atmosphere? Why does it look like someone died? At 7:30, I give the band the signal. It's time. Kurt walks out first, followed by the rest of the band. The audience applauds, but Kurt doesn't acknowledge them. He sits on his stool, adjusts his microphone, and stares at the floor. He's wearing that green fuzzy cardigan over a t-shirt. His blonde hair hangs in his face. He looks fragile. Without any introduction, without any banter, he starts playing the opening chords of About a Girl. His voice is quiet at first, almost a whisper. But by the first chorus, it builds into something powerful. The acoustic arrangement makes the song feel more vulnerable, more honest than the electric version. The audience is mesmerized. Between songs, Kurt barely speaks. Most artists on Unplugged chat with the audience, tell stories, make jokes. Kurt just plays. When they launch into Come As You Are, the audience recognizes it immediately. But Kurt's performance is different from the Nevermind version. It's slower, sadder, more haunting. Then comes Jesus Doesn't Want Me for a Sunbeam, the Vaseline's cover. Most of the audience has never heard this song. But Kurt sings it with such conviction that it doesn't matter. You can feel that this song means something to him. Next is The Man Who Sold the World, the David Bowie cover. This is the moment where Kurt's genius becomes undeniable. He takes this obscure 1970 glam rock song and transforms it into a grunge anthem. His vocal delivery is perfect, slightly detached, slightly haunting, like he's singing from another dimension. Years later, people will mistakenly think The Man Who Sold the World is a Nirvana original. Even David Bowie will joke that Kurt's version is better than his. Halfway through the show, Kurt and Chris Kirkwood from the Meat Puppets join the band on stage. They play 3 Meat Puppet songs, Plateau, Oh Me, and Lake of Fire. The audience is confused. Who are these guys? Why is Nirvana playing someone else's songs instead of their own hits? But Kurt is glowing. He's smiling for the first time all night. He's on stage with one of his favorite bands, exposing them to millions of MTV viewers. This is what he wanted, to use his platform to shine a light on the underground artists who influenced him. After the Meat Puppets leave the stage, Nirvana plays a few more songs, All Apologies, Something in the Way, Pennyroyal Tea. Each song is more emotionally intense than the last. Kurt's voice is straining. You can hear the exhaustion, the pain, the raw vulnerability. And then it's time for the final song. Kurt adjusts his microphone one last time. He looks out at the audience. And he starts playing the opening chords of Where Did You Sleep Last Night? What happens next will become the most legendary moment in MTV Unplugged history. The opening chords of Where Did You Sleep Last Night ring out through Sony Music Studios. Kurt's voice starts soft and controlled. My girl, don't lie to me, tell me where did you sleep last night? This is a folk blues song from 1944, written and recorded by Lead Belly. It's a dark song about infidelity and murder, set in the cold pine forests where the sun never shines. Kurt discovered this song through Mark Lanigan of the Screaming Trees, who introduced him to Lead Belly's music. Kurt became obsessed with it. He loved the darkness, the simplicity, the raw emotion. But nothing could prepare anyone in the studio for what's about to happen. As Kurt moves through the first verse and chorus, his delivery is haunting but controlled. His voice is clear, almost gentle. In the pines, where the sun don't ever shine, I would shiver the whole night through. The acoustic arrangement is sparse, just Kurt's guitar, Chris's bass, Dave's light brushwork on the drums. Pat Smear adds subtle guitar textures in the background. But something is building. You can feel the tension mounting with each verse. By the second verse, Kurt's voice is getting stronger, more intense. My girl, where will you go? I'm going where the cold wind blows. The audience is completely silent. Nobody moves. Nobody coughs. Everyone can sense that something extraordinary is happening. And then comes the final verse. Kurt's entire body tenses. His face contorts. And he screams the final lines with such devastating intensity that it feels like his soul is being ripped out of his body. My girl, don't lie to me. Tell me where did you sleep last night? His voice cracks. It's not a polished vocal performance. It's primal. It's raw. It's painful to witness. In the pines, where the sun don't ever shine. And then he delivers the final line, screaming with everything he has left. I would shiver the whole night through. As the last word leaves his mouth, Kurt's voice completely gives out. He can barely finish the final note. The song ends. The guitar stops. Complete silence. Kurt slumps forward, exhausted. He looks like he's just run a marathon. His hands are shaking. Sweat drips from his face. The audience erupts in applause. They're on their feet, cheering, crying. I'm standing in the control booth, and I'm shaking. In my entire career producing live music, I've never witnessed a performance that intense. Dave Grohl looks stunned. Krist Novoselic has tears streaming down his face. Kurt slowly stands up. He adjusts his guitar strap. The audience is still applauding, still cheering. They want more. They want an encore. MTV's protocol for Unplugged is to always do an encore, one more song to send the audience home happy. I speak into Kurt's earpiece. That was incredible. Ready for the encore. Kurt doesn't respond immediately. He's staring at the floor, catching his breath. Finally, he looks up at me in the control booth. He shakes his head slowly. Then he says 4 words that will become legendary. I can't top that. He sets down his guitar. He walks off the stage without another word. The audience is still applauding, still calling for more. But Kurt is done. He gave everything he had. There's nothing left. I make an announcement to the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the show. Thank you for being here. Some audience members are confused. No encore. That never happens on Unplugged. But others understand. You don't follow a performance like that. You let it stand alone. As I watch Kurt disappear backstage, I realize we've just captured something that will live forever. Backstage, Kurt Cobain collapses onto a couch. He's physically and emotionally drained. Dave Grohl sits next to him. Jesus Christ, Kurt. That was... He can't finish the sentence. There are no words. Pat Smear is pacing, shaking his head in disbelief. I've never seen anything like that. Krist Novoselic is quiet, processing what just happened. I walk into the dressing room to check on the band. Kurt looks up at me with exhausted eyes. Did we get it? He asks. I nod. We got it. Good, he says. Then he closes his eyes and doesn't say another word. The MTV executives are ecstatic. They know they've just captured something special. This isn't just another Unplugged episode. This is going to be historic. But there's one problem. Kurt refused to play any of Nirvana's biggest hits. Smells Like Teen Spirit isn't on the set list. Neither is Lithium, or Heart-Shaped Box, or In Bloom. The biggest songs from Nevermind and In Utero, the songs that made Nirvana famous, are completely absent. Some MTV executives are worried. Will audiences watch an Unplugged episode where the band doesn't play their hits? But others understand that Kurt's gamble is brilliant. By refusing to play the obvious songs, he forced people to pay attention to the deep cuts, the covers, the songs that reveal who he really is as an artist. This isn't Nirvana's greatest hits. This is Nirvana's soul laid bare. The episode airs on MTV on December 14, 1993, about a month after the taping. The response is overwhelming. Critics call it one of the greatest live performances ever recorded. Fans are mesmerized by the raw emotion, especially that final performance of Where Did You Sleep Last Night? Kurt's decision not to play the hits is praised as a bold artistic statement. He used the biggest platform in music television to showcase the underground artists who influenced him, the Vaselines, the Meat Puppets, Lead Belly, David Bowie's forgotten songs. He turned a commercial opportunity into an education. But Kurt's relationship with the performance is complicated. In the months after the taping, he tells friends that he's proud of the show. He thinks it's one of Nirvana's best performances. But he also seems haunted by it. That final performance of Where Did You Sleep Last Night revealed something about him that was too raw, too vulnerable, too honest. It's like he gave away a piece of himself that he didn't know he had. On April 5, 1994, less than 5 months after the MTV Unplugged taping, Kurt Cobain passes away at the age of 27. The Unplugged performance suddenly takes on a different meaning. It becomes a farewell, a final statement, a last glimpse of an artist at his most vulnerable. MTV reruns the episode constantly in the weeks and months following Kurt's passing. Millions of people watch it, looking for clues, looking for answers, looking for closure. That final performance of "Where Did You Sleep Last Night" becomes iconic. People analyze every note, every facial expression, every moment of intensity. Was Kurt trying to tell us something? Was this a cry for help? Or was it simply an artist giving everything he had to one perfect performance? We'll never know. But what we do know is that Kurt Cobain's instinct to refuse to play the hits, to end with an obscure folk blues song from 1944, to leave the stage without an encore, these decisions created one of the most powerful and haunting live performances in rock history. On November 1, 1994, 7 months after Kurt Cobain's passing, DGC Records releases MTV Unplugged in New York as a live album. The album debuts at number 1 on the Billboard 200. It sells 310,500 copies in its first week. This is extraordinary for a live album, especially one featuring obscure covers and deep cuts instead of hits. But people aren't buying it just to hear great music. They're buying it to feel close to Kurt one more time, to hear his voice, to experience that raw emotion. MTV Unplugged in New York goes on to sell 5 million copies in the United States alone, 8 million copies worldwide. In 1996, the album wins the Grammy Award for Best Alternative Music Performance. Kurt Cobain, who spent his career conflicted about mainstream success, who hated polished production and commercial radio, who refused to play his hits on MTV, his acoustic covers album wins a Grammy and becomes one of the best-selling live albums of all time. The irony is almost unbearable. But there's something else that makes this album special: Kurt's cover of "The Man Who Sold the World." Remember, this is a David Bowie song from 1970 that nobody knew. Kurt took it and made it his own. His version becomes so iconic that entire generations of music fans think it's a Nirvana original. They have no idea David Bowie wrote it. David Bowie himself is amused by this. Years later, he'll perform the song in concert and jokingly introduce it as a song by Nirvana. But Bowie also acknowledges that Kurt's version is haunting and beautiful in ways that his original never was. Kurt took an obscure glam rock song and transformed it into a grunge masterpiece. And then there's "Where Did You Sleep Last Night?" That final performance, Kurt's voice cracking, his body shaking, his soul pouring out, becomes the most analyzed and discussed moment in MTV Unplugged history. Music critics write essays about it. Documentaries dissect it. Fans watch it over and over, trying to understand what was happening inside Kurt's mind in that moment. Was he thinking about his tumultuous relationship with Courtney Love? Was he thinking about his struggles with addiction and depression? Was he channeling Lead Belly's original darkness? Or was he simply a brilliant performer giving everything he had to one perfect song? The truth is probably all of the above. Great art doesn't have one meaning. It contains multitudes. In 2007, MTV ranks Nirvana's Unplugged performance as the greatest episode in the show's history. It beats Eric Clapton, Pearl Jam, Mariah Carey, and every other legendary artist who appeared on the show. And in 2020, Kurt's guitar from that performance, the 1959 Martin D-18E acoustic, is sold at auction for $6 million. $6 million for a guitar that played obscure covers and refused to play "Smells Like Teen Spirit." That's the ultimate vindication of Kurt's artistic vision. Kurt Cobain refused to give MTV what they wanted. He refused to play the hits. He refused to be predictable. He refused to end with an encore. And by refusing to do what was expected, he created something that will last forever. Subscribe to honor the artists who trust their instincts even when everyone tells them they're wrong. Like this video if MTV Unplugged in New York changed your life. Turn on notifications for more stories about performances that became immortal. Because sometimes the greatest artistic statements come from saying no. And Kurt Cobain's final no became the most powerful yes in live music history.